Hi, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connection. Each of us have stories that help us understand each other and help to bring our community closer together. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who've had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who've had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories. Community Connections is about these people and about their stories. I'm sure you'll enjoy meeting these amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Please enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and my guest today is a wonderful, personable individual who has enjoyed a wide range of activities. He's helped communities to connect, he's helped them to celebrate, and he's used sport, music, and a number of participatory activities in the entertainment field to help communities come together in more meaningful ways. And I'm delighted to welcome Scott Ackles. Welcome, Scott, to Community Connections.
Thank you so much for having me, Gordy. It's a pleasure.
It's a delight. So can you tell us a little bit about where you were born and growing up and things that the inspirations you've had in terms of the people who've been role models for you and growing up and being a part of our community and so many communities?
Great. I'd love to, Gordy. I was born and raised in Vancouver, born way back in 1965, and grew up in Vancouver. Most of my life around Mount Pleasant, Riley Park, and played all my sports there, and went to elementary school in and around those areas, and soccer, rugby, baseball, hockey, Percy Norman pool, swimming. And, it was such a great, I think, place to grow up as a kid. And there was, so many things to be able to do, and lots of great friends and families. And growing up in Vancouver way back when was really, really neat. You walked everywhere. I crossed 25th 2 times a day, 25th and Cambie, from the time I was going to elementary school till the time of course, when I finished high school. But anyways, back in those days, Vancouver seemed like such a sleepy town, and it certainly has changed. And of course, when Expo 86 came to Vancouver, it changed Vancouver forever, and all for the better, I think, in terms of we're now an international city, and it's I've lived abroad in the United States on a few different occasions, in Las Vegas and in Dallas, and in Calgary in Alberta, in Alberta in Canada, and always wanted to come home. And it's been so happy to have made Vancouver our home for many years, and both my wife Teresa and I feel so lucky that we're able to live where we live now, which is in the peninsula of South Surrey White Rock. So, and of course, that's one of the reasons that you and I met, Gordy, throughout our travels in sport and by living in the same community.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your father and sort of I'm sure he was a wonderful role model for you, and then talk about your trips to the U.S. Football League and engagement there, and then to Calgary?
Yeah. Growing up as a kid, let's see, my father, Bobby Ackles, became the water boy back in 1954, and started his young career, not knowing where he would have wound up, but knowing that he wanted to be involved in sports. He was playing football at the time for the Vancouver Blue Bombers, and when football was announced that there was going to be a CFL team in Vancouver, he went and tugged on Anastukas, his jacket there, and said, "Hey, I want a job as a water boy." And he said, "Sure, kid," and that's how we started, and doing laundry and working his way up through the equipment room, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, in the late 70s, becoming the general manager. And of course, I graduated high school in 1983. So from the time I was born and the time I was a young kid, I did a lot of those things too. I did a lot of laundry and a lot of sometimes even lining the field, practice fields in East Vancouver when they had to get off of the hard surface at Empire Stadium, because it was literally just carpet on top of cement in that venue there. And so I spent a lot of time as a kid growing up around Empire Stadium and running around the P&E and knowing that Dad had no idea where I was really. And but any day, being around the football team was really interesting, and it was just a part of life. And certainly when I grew up in high school, the BC Lions, they were going through some of their darkest hours. And, I'd wear my BC Lions jacket every day, no matter what, no matter win or lose, draw, whatever. And of course, I graduated in '83. So I would sit at Empire Stadium in the box with my father. I'd help out on game days and doing all kinds of different things, whatever he wanted me to do, and or the equipment managers needed me to do it for whatever reason. And then finally, '83, the Lions really, after I graduated, really started to become contenders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I never really got. What's that?
Are there some players that stand out for you in those early years that some
Well,
names
yeah,
that you remember that are significant?
standout. Yeah, there was some, the good and the bad and the ugly stand out,
Yeah.
but we'll focus on the good. The Cardiac Kids, Jerry Taggy and the Cardiac Kids in the mid to late '70s. I guess it'd be '77 is when they really started to get some traction. And Jim Young, what a champion, Jimmy was, and so many others. Larry Watkins. There's some players, it didn't matter where they were winning or losing. It was about the person.
Yeah.
And doing laundry. Of course, I got to know everybody. And I got to do, socks, jocks, and towels and all that kind of stuff, and roaming through the dressing room and cleaning up. And I got to know a lot of really, really nice people and who happened to be great football players. And
certainly out of Surrey, Mike Cassick came out of Surrey, and Terry Bailey
yes,
in later years, Terry Bailey. And
yeah, and of course, other local heroes, Louis Pasaglia, and the list goes on and on and on. Ted Girella. So there was a lot of great Canadian talent, as there still is today. And so growing up in that environment, it was just kind of a natural thing where you just did whatever the team kind of needed. And from there, my father left after winning a Grey Cup. So in the 1985, we won a Grey Cup. And the only thing I was really disappointed about is that I never had the opportunity to tell my friends at school, like, in high school, because I took so much of a beating of abuse in terms of the BC Lions this, the BC Lions that, and so whatever. It hasn't. It wasn't like I needed to do that, but it was certainly would have been really fun to have been able to walk to school with that jacket on that I wore every day, day in and day out. And proud of my team and everything to be able to say, oh, well, we finally did it. Anyways, a lot of great memories with the BC Lions growing up as a kid. And certainly then my father moved down to the US into the NFL with the Dallas Cowboys. And at the time I was going to BCIT. Actually at the time, yeah, I was I just finished BCIT in a 2-year broadcast radio production course. And, throughout many years working with the Lions in advance of graduating high school, I worked at CFund. So I was always, the whole reason I wanted to work in radio was because of music. I have a real passion for music, and I've got I play some music. I'm a lot better in my own mind than than other people think I really am.
You're pretty good.
Yeah. In any case, music was my real passion, and of course, sport, being around the football team, and having been an athlete in high school was a lot of fun, and really you make your best friends when you're playing with sports teams. I think, and even some of those people I haven't seen in years and years and years, but whenever we do connect, there's always a strong connection, and it's always great to see. And it's as if time had stopped for the past 35 years, it seems, or 40 years maybe. But in any case, a lot of great memories growing up around the BC Lions Football Club, and then of course having gone to Dallas when my parents went to Dallas. I took a 3-year video production program, and went to a small college in Irving, Texas, and worked with the Cowboys in their video production department there, and as I had worked with the BC Lions in their video production department as well. Two different things. I use that term loosely when I say the BC Lions video production department when you compare it to the Dallas Cowboys video production department, because I was the department for the Lions. And of course, at the Cowboys, there was a small television station network that was, 5 or 6 people, full-time employees running that department. In any case, the difference between the CFL and the NFL at that point in time. But, it was a great opportunity for me to go to Texas and work in that environment and to go to school and to be able to do the 3-year program and learn a lot about something I was really passionate about. And again, it was all about the music for me and the arts, as opposed to kind of sports. Even though I really love sports, I really appreciate sports, and I see the value of sport in so many different ways. It was more the creative thing for me. And so if you fast forward to my career, and I left the Cowboys, or left Dallas in 1989 after 3 years, from 86 to 89. And then I wound up back in Vancouver, married my wife, Teresa, in 1990. And I was working as a video production cameraman for TSN and much music, much West at the time. And had an opportunity to work for a number of different creative music videos for Much Music, and as well as in sport with TSN, and worked for David Pratt. I was his camera guy, and when he was on TSN, doing all the stuff out of Vancouver here, and worked for Terry David Mulligan, doing all of his camera work for the Much West production of all the music happenings in Vancouver and around the West Coast here. And so throughout that, I learned a lot about production and never lost touch with sport. And a few years later, I had become involved in the BC Lions through, of course, when David Braley bought the BC Lions Football Club. The Lions had gone through some really hard times, and David Braley was the person who saved the franchise, literally, from going bankrupt, and he had already saved the Tiger Cats, of course, at this point in time, and already helped the league out in several different occasions. And so when David Braley came to town, there was a strong connection between David Braley and Maury Keith, of course, with Duick GM. And Glenn Ringdahl, who I worked with in a communications firm, was one of the smaller businesses that Maury Keith was starting up. He would be involved in a lot of different startups outside of the car business. And so when Maury Keith had David Braley come in one day to his dealership, Duick GM on Marine Drive, Glenn Ringdahl, of course, who I was working for at the time, was the vice president of marketing for the Canucks for several years, and in fact was instrumental in working with the Griffiths family and bringing the new the Rogers, at the time it was called the Garage GM Place, to fruition. And of course, Glenn had started to work with Maury in developing these other businesses, and they had hired me to develop one of them. And it was just kind of an intersection where football came back together with Duick and Maury Keith and Glenn Ringdahl, because Glenn had worked for the Lions for several years as the director of communications. Anyways, long story short, Gordy, Glenn ended up being the president of the BC Lions Football Club. And of course, I had worked in the club back in the 70s and early 80s when Glenn was the vice president of marketing. And I was just a volunteer at the time, but he said, "Hey, you've got this degree in radio production. You got a degree in video production. And I know I was putting on events, just kind of doing these smaller music events." And he said, "Why don't you, and you know the football club inside and out, why don't you run our game day operations?" And so I was fortunate enough to kind of fall into that position and work with some really good people at the Lions organization for, I think it was from 1998 to 97 actually, until 2000 till 2000. And of course, throughout that period of time, I ran all the game day operations, all the entertainment, anything that a fan saw, heard, or was engaged with inside BC Place Stadium and outside of the stadium on the Terry Fox Plaza, the pregame activities, the halftime shows, all the entertainment based, music based, day-to-day operation of everything outside of the football field, essentially operationally, I dealt with. And it was a lot of fun. And of course, working for a CFL club and some of those tight budgets, you have to figure out how to get things done on a shoestring budget in a lot of cases. And it was always a challenge, and it was always a lot of fun. And we were always working with a lot of great people in the community and amateur football, so many different great organizations and great volunteers that are super passionate about what they do and for all the right reasons. And so I learned a lot about having to deal with so many different things on so many different levels, and juggling a lot of different things, and just figuring out, just trying to make things work at the end of the day. And it was a great experience, a great challenge. And I ended up leaving the Lions after the 2000 Grey Cup. We won that year in Montreal, and I in fact had already left the club. I finished up my duties with the day-to-day operations for all the home games. I left the day after one of those games. It would have been Louis' last home game. And then I actually, funny story, I'd already got a job with the XFL, which was about to kick off the following February. So I left the Lions in November. Nobody knew that I was gone. My father, Bob, had left the Miami Dolphins at that time to become the general manager of the Las Vegas Outlaws in the XFL. And so I had, worked for the Lions from 97 until 2000. So I only had like 3 or 4 seasons underneath my belt. And in that time had put on a Grey Cup, as well as put on an American Bowl, an NFL game at BC Place Stadium. And so I cut my teeth, essentially, in sport, in a paid position. And so Bob hired me on as a director of events and operations with the Las Vegas Outlaws of the XFL, and we had a great 1 year run, if you can call 1 year a run, in Las Vegas. And it was an awesome experience to start a brand new league, a brand new team. And it was just one of those situations where, again, you've got to do whatever is needed to make it happen. And we only had a couple of months to kick off. February 8th, we kicked off. And I think I landed in Las Vegas in November 15th or 17th or something like that. And so we're bringing a whole new staff. We're renovating our players' locker room, setting up an office, hiring people, selling seasons tickets, everything from soup to nuts, and getting a new franchise and a new league kicked off. And we hosted training camp for 4 teams during this time as well, for all the Western teams, all at the same time. So it was as you can imagine, didn't get much sleep, and just did whatever it was needed in order to kick the league off and to make it a success. And unfortunately, although we did really well in Las Vegas, we sold out 4 out of our 5 games. We sold 20,000 seasons tickets in record time. There was only 5 home games at that point in time with the XFL, and they're going to kick off again, as you know, in 2021. But in any case, it was a great experience. And it was awesome to work with my father at that level, in a director's role. He was a general manager, and to have created something brand new, kicked it off. We were very successful in Las Vegas from a revenue standpoint, and from a sponsorship standpoint, ticketing standpoint, and an event standpoint. And to have worked with Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol from NBC in a pretty close relationship was just so much fun. And even though that the league didn't work out, it was worth the opportunity. And we came back home to Surrey, and started in another career in sport and entertainment, loosely related, and in an organization where I worked as a vice president of VP of development for an analytics and research company in major sport leagues and entertainment type of events. So it was a lot of fun. But Gordy, I know you probably want to ask me a question because I keep rambling on here. Just feel
No,
free to stop me at any time.
no, it's wonderful to hear you go through this and tell us about the great experiences you've had. You've had a very blessed life and the things you've been had the opportunity to be in and to be involved in. You could talk a little bit about Calgary and about being involved and coming
Yeah.
back and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So coming back from Las Vegas, it was a great opportunity to land in another opportunity in terms of being outside of sport, but indirectly related and working at a league level with the NFL and with the CFL, as well as with many other major leagues, Major League Baseball, as well as NHRA, National Hot Rod and Drag Racing Association. So I had, the company was called Event Corp, and we provided services, data and analytics research services at the time. All research was collected on site with all these major events. So we worked at events, everything from Super Bowls to Grey Cups to PGA senior men's, the Augusta, all the big events in North America, and that led me to travel to New York frequently with all those different major leagues, which are based out of New York, and selling our services. And it was really unique business in that Ken Monroe, the owner of the business, it was a very small business, like 4 or 5 of us working there. And Ken, when he hired me, when I was moving back from Las Vegas, because I used to hire, or rather contract Event Corp to find out our, doing research on with the BC Lions at BC Place Stadium, because we were always trying to improve our services, our entertainment, whatever our operational issues were. We'd find out from our fans, and we'd survey the fans in order to find out the information, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and so what we needed to do better, what we needed to fix, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really good tool to be able to utilize. So having been a customer and having been in sport and entertainment, and then now having been on the other side of the table selling the services, it was natural for me. And having been so operationally focused as well as on a revenue focused as well, it was really easy for me to be genuine and to really understand and the value of the service. And so it was a lot of fun, but I ended up traveling, internationally for, I'm going to suggest that, geez, that was 3 or 4 years. And then I would be on the road about 160 days a year. And after 3 or 4 years of that, it became a lot. And having our second child, Robin, on the way, it was just time for me to try and settle down in Vancouver. And coincidentally, my father was brought out of retirement by David Braley, who had owned and ran the BC Lions and owned the organization for several years. And yes, Bob was being inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, and David Braley had a thought, I guess, because he's obviously lives in Hamilton, and that's where the Canadian Football Hall of Fame is located, and he's very close to that organization. He thought, geez, I wonder if Bob would ever consider coming back to the BC Lions. And so a couple phone calls later, and Bob was now going back to Vancouver to become the CEO of the Lions, and I was still working with Event Corp based out of Vancouver. And I guess he had been there, he'd gone through his first year just to kind of reevaluate the entire organization and figure out how he wanted to make it his own, and what he needed to do to make it another championship organization. And so it's funny because we were living in Surrey at the time, and I told Bob, I said, geez, there's this really interesting job opportunity that's come forward, and it's to be the director of business development for Powell River, the air, what was it called, the on the Sunshine Coast. It was for a director of operations to oversee all of the small events in the Sunshine Coast for the summertime. And I was really I was interested, and I talked to them for a few times, and the fellow invited me up to have a job interview. So I went up, and we had never been to Powell River before. and it was about shortly before Christmas, beginning of December. Would have been 2000 and oh gosh, I think it was 2002, 2003. Sorry, I think. And mom and dad, Bob and Kay, and we had two kids at this time. And they said, "Well, we'll go up there with you and just make a weekend of it," kind of thing. So we go up there, and the weather's awful, of course. And we go up there, and we spend the night in the hotel. And then I had my interview the next day, and we come out of the interview, and we were going to stay there another night. And as we're having dinner, my mom and dad say, "So how'd the interview go?" I said, "Well, it went really well, actually, and I think I think he's going to offer me a job." And so the next day, the fella calls me and he offers me the job. And then so I say, "Okay, I'm gonna need 24 hours just to make a decision." First time I've been in Powell River, and of course, as you know, Gordy, there's two ferries to get there. And yeah, there's an airport there, but you know, it's a big commitment to make to live in a small community. And Teresa and I kept saying to ourselves, because we always wanted to live in White Rock in South Surrey, and we hadn't began living here at this point in time, at that point in time rather. And so we said, "Geez, you know, it reminds us, it's kind of the same landscape as what White Rock has, kind of thing. You know, you're right on the ocean, and they're talking about building these dock for cruise ships, and all this kind of development was supposed to happen, that of course never did. But in any case, we were on the ferry ride on the way back home, and there had been a torrential monsoon the night before. And so we finally get on the ferry at Langdale, and we're coming back to Horseshoe Bay. And I remember my father goes, "Well, hey, Scott, let's go for a walk around the ferry and have a coffee." I said, "Sure." And so I remember we're in the ferry, and we're looking around, and there was logs and wood everywhere, like everywhere, the entire way from Langdale to Horseshoe Bay, because this monsoon had taken all this wood off the mountains and off the beaches. It was super high tide, and now it's like a landmine of wood everywhere in the water. But long story short, Gordy, so Bob says to me, he goes, "Gee, Scott, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, it sounds like a really interesting opportunity, and I could oversee a bunch of small arts and music festivals um, along the Sunshine Coast, and you know, it'd be really neat to be able to. We could afford to buy a home. You know, it's the same situation as it is now as it was back when Teresa and I were first married. Is, you know, we're trying to buy our first house, and couldn't afford to where we grew up at, you know, Mount Pleasant. And so, you know, you got to move further and further out, kind of thing. We thought that'd be a great place to raise a family. Anyways, so Bob says to me, he said, "Well, before you go ahead and make this decision," he says, I haven't told anybody yet. I haven't asked David Braley yet, but he says, "I want you to run Grey Cup in 2005." And he said, "You know, I'd have to get David to agree to that." He says, "I've already got a um, a chairman in place, a volunteer chairman for Grey Cup, who is Dennis Skulski from Pack Press." And he goes, "You know, would you want to do that?" He says, basically, he says, "Scott," he says, "I don't want to make this life-changing decision when I know that this is what I would like for you to take on, if it is something that you want to do. You want to get back into sport and entertainment and run a Grey Cup." And of course, I would go, "That would be like the ultimate for me, right?" And so of course we didn't go to Powell River. And of course, you know, I did run the '05 Grey Cup, and with a great team of people and stakeholders and the community and volunteers, and it worked out extremely successful. We were able to use and leverage our Grey Cup '05 footprint, and of course, as you know, Gordy, the 2010 Olympics were only 5 years down the road, so we used a lot of space where we put our festival. We worked with emergency services, the police, City of Vancouver, the province, as well as the organizing committee 2010, to really help utilize a big celebration, the Grey Cup Festival, Canada's largest sporting event, to help with some of the planning for the 2010 Olympics. And of course, if you can remember back then, Vancouver didn't have a great track record in hosting events and having a great celebration and a lot of fun. We were known to be the no fun city. Unfortunately, there were some things that occurred throughout the years, where things would go sideways. And of course, I think the most recent thing that went sideways was unfortunately the Canucks, the Stanley Cup, the first riot. And in any case, so having run that event was my first real Grey Cup, where I was actually the general manager in charge of everything and had to hire everybody, and as opposed to just being a cog in the wheel, for the other Grey Cup that I was involved in. But it was a great experience, and it was probably one of the most memorable, experiences that I've had in building something with a team, and with so many great people. Like I said, there were so many great volunteers and partners and stakeholders, and doing something, for the first time and having it be extremely successful was really rewarding, and challenging at the same time. And so that was a lot of fun. And that the success of that morphed into staying on with the Lions as a vice president of operations, and then working with, BC Pavco, and how we could provide a really good, um, a really good fan friendly experience at BC Place Stadium. So we just kind of had this momentum going that just kept building and building and building, and just working with some really great people at the time, like Howard Crosley at BC Place Stadium, and Joseph Richard, and so many others, and of course the province of BC, and totally, being able to make a change, which was really the number one thing, a customer service, change, as well as, the opportunity to we are our fan base was growing rapidly. And this was, 2005. Yeah, it was 2004. We were in the Grey Cup and we lost the Grey Cup. 2005, we were not. We made it to the semifinal in Vancouver and we lost. And I remember being with our team at that game, and we had our team was devastated. Like the Grey Cup, festival group, my direct staff, and of course the Lions staff, and it was extremely disheartening, because now you got to go the next 10 days. You got to suck it up and you got to deliver, right, the party for the rest of the country. And sorry, go ahead, Gordy.
Just thanks, Scott, that you've had, your involvement, and we often hear about, in theory, the power of culture, the power of music, the power of sport to connect communities. And you've actually lived that and been able to experience that. Can you talk a little bit about the connections that happen with communities and some of the things that you've learned about that may be useful to others who are watching and listening about our local communities and the values that you've been able to operationalize?
Yeah, and I think a great example, Gordy, will be, the 2006 Grey Cup. The following year, the Lions won the Grey Cup in 06, and of course, we were in Winnipeg where the game was held, and we were hosting our big event at the Lions Den at Grey Cup in 06 in Winnipeg at the Convention Center, and you were, representing, Premier Gordon Campbell, in Winnipeg. Gordon was I think he was on a business, event in Asia or something, and you were sent as the Premier's representative, and you came onto the stage and said a few words. We had never met before prior to that event, and then of course you were with us, sitting in the stands, watching the Lions win the Grey Cup, and it was overwhelming how emotional that was, and then of course we went away, and we celebrated, and you were part of that celebration, and along with all of our sponsors and all of our stakeholders and our volunteers that were there with us as well. And the Grey Cup, was shared amongst the team, and we had a big celebration, just a private celebration, but we kind of opened our arms and brought everybody in who really wanted to be there and were part of it. And then it was that night that you and I came up with the idea of, geez, we're the BC Lions are the BC Lions, and they represent all of the province of British Columbia. So how can we and could we share the Grey Cup with the province? And so from that evening, we together, you and I, your team and my team, we put together our heads and we figured out a way to, I think we did 21 city tour in 7 or 11 days or something. Maybe it's 7 days probably.
It was a
And
remarkable tour, and it was
it,
there's
it,
talking about those the things that stand out. I remember we were just outside of Kelowna, and we were doing a little radio show, and just as we were leaving, we had a phone call, and a woman said, my father played in the Grey Cup in 1940 something, and I've never seen it, and my mother would like to see it. And we went there, and then went off to the school, and those type of things happened all over the province. And great credit to you and to the Lions, and bringing a community together around sport, around culture, and around those issues. And we're most appreciative for that opportunity and for what that has done to connect our province together. And as you're saying, that we led up to the Olympics, which again celebrated in that fashion. I think a lot of the seeds for that were sown by the BC Lions and by the work that you did in that, and we're most appreciative for that. And I know I've taken a lot of your time, and
no.
most appreciative. And are there any kind of final thoughts that you'd have that you'd want to pass on to people about our commitment and the way that communities work, and particularly what you've seen as what you're doing right now in terms of, again, looking at ways of connecting people?
Yeah, the power of sport, the power of music, culture, the arts, and bringing people together is I think people are truly realizing the power of that. Where in a situation where you can't experience that, or there are fewer opportunities to experience, um, whether it's playing together in amateur sport, community sport, university sport, at any different level, and of course the arts as well. And this is one thing that's probably affected me, is the ability to participate in and again the creative and the music side of things is been really important, for me, and as well as the sport part of it. And not being able to get together with the community and be involved in any art or culture or type of sport, type of environment, because you really do, it really makes you realize what you really are, what's really important in life, and what is important to the community, in terms of getting together. And it's not just about being together, but it's helping one another. And of course, in a situation like there is now today, I think we found other ways to be able to do that. But it's interesting how when some things are not available to you because of a pandemic, then you really realize what's really important as opposed to what isn't important. And it's been great to be involved in sport and entertainment, not because they're sexy, as a lot of people who don't work inside the industry realize how much work it is. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of, you got to be passionate about what you do. And if you don't approach it that way, and you think it's just you're doing this because you want to be involved in something that is more public facing, I guess, it might be for the wrong reason. So it's been an honor for me to have been involved in so many different really life-changing experiences, and those experiences are all based on putting on events for other people to enjoy, and and kind of imagining, okay, if we did this, wouldn't that be awesome for the country to be able to participate in. And a Grey Cup is essentially part of Canada's mosaic. Um, um, how do you say? It's part of who we are as Canadians, and it's not necessarily all about sport. And that's the one thing I've always said to people, is that they always peg me as a sport guy. And I go, actually, Grey Cups were an opportunity for me, but me be able to put on music and entertainment, as well as celebrate a championship, right?
One of the things I noticed when we traveled with you was that you were always talking to the people who were coming to see it, whether it was a lineup in Prince George to see the Grey Cup that was 100 meters long, and you were down chatting with everybody and getting that sense. And I think when it goes, great credit to you for being out there and engaging people in so meaningful ways to help establish and take a process in place. And I know that I've run almost out of time, but I really want to express our appreciation to you and Teresa and your family for the contributions you've made, not just to our community, but to our province and to our country. It's been a delight to watch you work, to be someone who's been involved in some of the things that you've produced and has really enjoyed and appreciated what you've done. Thank you so very much. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.